Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Zatinik. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the German-Australian Chamber of Industry and Commerce, and I welcome everyone to our insightful webinar this afternoon. Before giving you a proper welcome from the Chamber and introduce you a little bit further into what we do and how we can support you and your business, it is my absolute great pleasure to introduce Sarah Saheli, Director Global Engagement at Global Victoria. I have the great pleasure of knowing Sarah for a number of years. She has been with Global Victoria since 2019 and is now, among her responsibilities, is the Global Victorian Government's International Trade and Investment Network with 23 offices in key strategic locations, which is really a very impressive network without doubt, and really a great asset to support businesses from Victoria expanding overseas, as well as, of course, attracting investment into Victoria. But of course, it's not just the Global Victoria network that is very impressive, but also Sarah's background as well. She has spent 14 years working in the Middle East before joining Global Victoria, mostly in Dubai, so a very strong international record, working with global brands and with a focus on corporate marketing, media, research, and business development. She has led global as well as regional teams and is therefore absolutely delighted to have her in this important role for Global Victoria, and especially here on our webinar this afternoon. Sarah, can I hand over to you, please?
Oh, thank you, Michael. You're so kind and generous with your words, but it's my absolute pleasure to be here. Good afternoon, everyone, for those of us joining here in Melbourne, or good morning for those of us that may be joining from overseas. As Michael said, I'm the Director of Global Engagement within Global Victoria. Today, I'm joining you from Port Melbourne, and for me, that means that the traditional owners of the land on which I've joined this meeting is the Boonwurrung or the Boonwurrung. They're part of the Kulin Nation. So if I can ask you please to join me in paying respects to the traditional owners of land on which you've joined this meeting from, and together we pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. Thank you. So on behalf of Global Victoria, I'm delighted to be here. This is the second event that the German-Australian Chamber has held as part of the Global Trade Alliance, the Global Victoria Trade Alliance program that we've been running. We're all about today talking about how to enter the post-COVID-19 German supply chain. This is the second event in a three-part series. For those of you that don't know much about Global Victoria, if I can just briefly explain who we are and why we're forging ahead with government intervention. We are the Victorian Government's Trade Facilitation Agency, and we are a gateway to global markets and communities. The programs that we design and run are there to build export capability within Victoria. So we know that the world is becoming hyper competitive, especially as there's quite a race for economic recovery. People can't rely on domestic activity alone. They are really seeking export to be part of that economic recovery. So the good news for Victoria is that we're really well poised to support Victorian businesses with their trade requirements, their export requirements. As Michael said, we have 23 international offices. They're in key strategic locations all over the world. And that's the greatest international presence of any state or territory in Australia. I mean, even if you look at our closest rival, New South Wales, they're on an aggressive growth trajectory, but once they complete their growth plans, they'll only have 55 people on the ground, where we've already got over 100 people on the ground. In fact, we have more people on the ground overseas than we do in Melbourne right now. And that's what's really important. As we recover and as people start travelling, we've got those boots on the ground, and we've got the depth and breadth of experience to support Victorian businesses. And in Europe, I mean, last time we kicked off this program, Tim Dillon was able to join you. He sends his apologies for not being able to be here today and sends his best regards. But under his leadership over in Europe, we have our Frankfurt office. We opened that up in 1982, and we're forging ahead to make sure that presence is deepened and strengthened as well. So whether companies are looking to export, start an export program, expand an export program, our support is really what sometimes companies need, just to lean on the reputation and the security of government. We forge connections, we make introductions, we match businesses together, and we also do that with through physical or virtual trade missions. So if anyone is interested in exploring opportunities with Global Victoria, please reach out to me. I'd love to help. So Germany, as you know, has been a very key trading partner for Victoria for quite some time. It's the 4th largest two-way trading partner when you look at the merchandising goods stats. We're proud to partner the German Australian Chamber because they're one of 29 partners that we have within the Global Victoria Trade Alliance. And this program is really all about helping promote and facilitate Victorian exports, just making sure that companies can pivot to new markets. I mean, we've been a long time partner with the Chamber, and they play a very important role in supporting trade and investment between Australia and Germany. Long may that continue. I mean, they've been operating in Victoria for over 40 years now. Well done. I hope there's some celebrations planned this year. And they've been a resident within our purpose-built International Chamber House ever since it opened in 2014. So today's topic on COVID-19 or supply chains, it speaks to the very heart of why we established the Global Victoria Trade Alliance. COVID-19, it's decimated supply chains. The scale of disruption has been unprecedented. We all know this. Hence, the key objective of the Global Victoria Trade Alliance is to help Victorian exporters adapt their business models, and so that they can reinvigorate supply chains and somehow build resilience. Moving forward, so that we can protect ourselves from any further disruptions. So that's why today's topic is so relevant. Today, it's great to be joined by some experts and business leaders that'll be involved in the panel. We've got Nathan Arneil from Henning Harders, Martin Jörg from Additive Assurance, Cornelio Camacho from the German Australian Chamber, and Heiko Stumpf, who's the Director for Australia and New Zealand for Germany Trade and Invest. So together, I think you'll find they'll give you a very compelling account on this subject. They'll give you first-hand experiences, some practical tips, and some key areas that you should consider when you are thinking about exporting your products and services into the Germany market. So Michael, thank you for the opportunity to join you today. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. I really look forward to hearing from the speakers soon.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Indeed, what Global Victoria is doing and the international network you have is truly impressive, and absolutely a great support for Victorian businesses thinking about their overseas operations, and of course what we will discuss today, accessing global supply chains, including in Germany in the post-COVID world, including the challenges you outlined. Thank you so much, Sarah. We're delighted to be partnering with Global Victoria and the Victorian government for the Global Trade Alliance project. Let me properly welcome you on behalf of the German Australian Chamber by me sharing a very short presentation with you. I hope you can all see my presentation now. I'm Michael Zatinik. As I said, I'm the Deputy CEO of the Chamber. And first of all, of course, I want to acknowledge that I'm hosting this webinar from the lands of the Gadigal of the Aurora Nation as the traditional custodians. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you all work today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this webinar. I pay my respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Australia. What is the German-Australian Chamber? You find our vision, mission, and values on this slide. We have been founded in 1977, and I just want to go on the vision because this is probably of most relevance for you as Victorian businesses. We want to be a trusted partner, enabler, and accelerator of sustainable business relations between Australia and Germany. And we truly understand that as a two-way interaction. Of course, we represent a lot of German subsidiaries in Australia, including Victoria, but of course, we are also there to support Australian businesses interested in Germany, and we do that in close collaboration with our partners, such as Global Victoria and Germany Trade and Invest, that you will hear about from Heiko a little bit further, more about what they provide. So it is absolutely great to have this webinar today to discuss this relevant topic. So what are we, and what can the Chamber do for you? Of course, we will have also my colleague Cornelia talking to us a little bit further in more detail what kind of services we provide, but I just wanted to let you know that we are your global partner, not just for the relationship between Australia and Germany, but really as part of a unique global worldwide network. We have very close collaboration with the other German chambers abroad. It is over 140 chambers in 92 countries, including, of course, here in the region in New Zealand, Indonesia, Singapore, just to name a few. We have very close regional cooperation, and of course, we are linked to every Chamber of Commerce in Germany and can therefore really provide you also direct insights from the grounds and relevant business connections. We also, of course, follow and influence developments happening on the European level, either through Euro Chambers, a network of European business chambers, or our own DHK office in Brussels. And as mentioned, we are closely collaborating with Germany Trade and Invest, which is a great partner, as well as, of course, Global Victoria and Austrade. And that is all that I wanted to share with you. And just to give you a first snapshot about the Chamber, please feel free to visit us, either our website, germany.org.au, or by contacting me directly. My email address is on the slide. And now it is my absolute great pleasure to introduce our moderator for today, which is Rolf Drohn, who is a not just a very experienced moderator, but also, of course, also a very close partner for the Chamber, being our vice chair of the board and executive director at Ernst & Young, where he has been working for many, many years, building up and supporting businesses active in the bilateral relationship. Of course, Rolf, we are delighted to have you here with us today, and can I directly hand over to you to further moderate our discussion and introduce our further speakers. Rolf, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we could look at the geopolitical situation, could look even at war, climate change, inflation, rising fuel costs, red and green tape, shortages of goods, rising taxes to repay COVID debt, and say it's all too hard. But this is the how-to seminar, and I very much hope that the conversations that we had earlier will bring across the Victorian spirit of entrepreneurs, how it can be done. Clearly, we will look at these externalities, and they will make us work harder and smarter. But again, we will focus on how it can be done, and also what can be learned from operating during the pandemic, and what will stay with us as the impact is lifting. Talking to our panelists of today, clearly I could not help but smile about the positive spirit and seeing an opportunity where others see an obstacle. Overall, COVID-19 accelerated pre-existing issues in the supply chain and brought priorities such as visibility, resilience, and digitalization to the fore. While some sectors were hard hit by disruptions, there were some winners, notably life sciences. Across the board, protecting, retaining, and reskilling the workforce is a major priority, along with investing to make the autonomous supply chain a reality. To set the scene, we will look at the now, the next and beyond for supply chains, the current negative impact, changes to regain control, and the future around digital and autonomous. First up, the pandemic had substantial negative effects on supply chains, and very few companies were fully prepared. COVID was a global disruption across trade, finance, health, education, business, societies, like few others in the past 100 years. It's no surprise then that very few companies felt they were fully prepared, but also that the pandemic did not slow down technology investments. Just-in-time models clearly were tested, leading to onshoring and nearshoring. We see increased freight and production costs combined with shortages of labor and goods driving inflation. And the sooner this cycle is broken, the better. Will it take more or less than 12 months? Economists for the moment are monitoring semiconductor production and supply as part of the economic analysis. Second, big changes on the horizon for supply chains, with greater supply chain visibility, efficiency, and resilience top of mind. There's a shift from linear supply chains to more integrated networks connecting many players, making visibility across all suppliers vital. Industry 4.0 enables this with devices and sensors, providing valuable data on where goods are at in the chain and their condition. For example, products with temperature monitoring may be critical, frozen foods, vaccines, and other medicines. Important are efforts to help workers use digital technologies, adapt changing company strategies and ways of working, such as increased virtual collaboration, and assist people in operating equipment with health and safety in mind. Environmental and sustainability goals must be measured against the European Green Deal, moving from commitments and targets to a taxonomy and real rules and regulations. There are new taxes on plastic, and to stop carbon being imported into the EU, the potential carbon border adjustment tax following data collection already in train. And again, the future will be about digital autonomous. But what can you do right now? You can reimagine the strategic architecture, alter trade flows, considering new trade agreements such as the European FTA, country incentives, and omni-channel acceleration. And we will hear from our panelists that work doesn't always have to be done locally. It can be done regionally or globally with warehouses and manufacturing sites. And there are then considerable tax implications, which can be positive and can help you prepare for future disruption. Again, both panelists have interesting stories to tell here. To build transparency and resiliency, you can improve disruption response with real-time visibility and monitoring your end-to-end supply chain, as well as scenario planning. And you can look at cost. I mean, prices are going up and up. Nathan, of course, will offer his views there, where it's prudent to optimize and where you might want to be careful in going with the cheapest option. And you can create competitive advantages around sustainability. Clearly, there is a circular economy coming up in Europe with no waste in products and manufacturing. And that leads to designing new products and third-party risk. Just to give you an example where this is actually entering reality, Europe has single-use plastic directive, the waste framework directive, plastic levy, action plan around circular economy, and equivalent local legislation. So for example, Spain and Italy have started to introduce a 45 cents per kilogram tax from 1 January 2022. In Great Britain, that's operating from 1 April 2022 with roughly the equivalent of 24 cents or thereabouts. And again, you want to look at implementing digital end-to-end supply chains, and maybe we can look at that when we talk to panelists. Next, we want to look at Germany Trade and Invest, which is the economic agency for the Federal Republic of Germany. The organization informs and advises international companies setting up businesses in Germany. Furthermore, DTAI supports German-based businesses seeking to expand in international markets with up-to-the-minute foreign trade information. In Australia, DTAI is represented by Heiko Stumpf. Heiko has been working for Trade and Invest in Sydney since August 2018. In addition to attracting investors from the German market, he reports on business opportunities in Australia and New Zealand for German companies. This includes market reports about various sectors such as mining, construction, agribusiness, and energy. Previously, Heiko reported from countries of Southern Africa for 6 years. From 2008 and 2012, he assisted foreign investors with legal matters in Berlin. So we are about to show a video. As said prior, the visual quality isn't 100%, but the message around Australian company investing in German food, beverage, medical, pharma sectors, 3D printing, and additive manufacturing should be clear. Thank you.
Good day, and very warm welcome to all participants of our today's webinar. My name is Heiko Stumpf, and I work for Germany Trade and Invest out of our office here in Sydney. In my presentation today, I want to give an overview about market opportunities for Victorian and Australian companies in Germany. Of course, there are myriad opportunities to enter the German supply chain, but as it's impossible to cover them all, I want to focus on three key industries, namely food and beverage, healthcare, and advanced manufacturing, as these are one of the three strongholds of the Victorian economy. But before we go into details, I would like to start with a quick overview of who we are and what we do. As Germany Trade Invest, we are the investment promotion agency of the German government, and we work under the umbrella of our federal ministry, which has recently been renamed to the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Protection. As such, our mandate is somehow twofold. We do export promotion for the German economy. For example, we do extensive market research, but we also provide support for international companies that want to establish a business presence in Germany, which could, for example, include sales offices, but also warehousing and manufacturing capacities. In this regard, we provide a range of services. For example, we support the site selection process, we provide extensive legal and tax information, and we also advise on available incentives, and all these services are free of charge. When we then have a look at the food and beverage industry, Germany provides plentiful opportunities. By GDP, Germany is the largest economy in Europe, and with a population of 83 million people, Germany also offers the largest consumer market in Europe with the highest total consumer spending. When we look at different from lockdowns and admission restrictions for restaurants, bars, and cafes. So sales numbers for 2021 are still pending, but the expectation is that they remain rather flat on the 2020 level. On a positive note, strong growth is expected for 2022 after restrictions are eased in the coming weeks. On the other hand, food retail sales benefited from lockdowns and a corresponding shift to more home cooking. And also the outlook is positive as food retail sales will benefit from a stronger economy. And forecasts show an expected growth of 3% in 2022. So Germany has a strong manufacturing base for food and beverage industries, which is characterized by more than 6,000 small and medium-sized enterprises. And the three biggest sub-segments, namely meat, dairy, and baked goods, make up almost 50% of the entire production value. The sector is also very export-orientated, with and international sales accounting for almost 35% of total revenue. But despite the strong manufacturing base, it's very important to point out that Germany is a net importer of food and beverages. So, for example, in 2020, Germany imported food and beverage products worth 88 billion euro. That's almost 140 billion Australian dollars. So this is a massive market. And over the past 10 years, the food imports into Germany grew by an average of 3.4%. There also is a number of interesting consumer trends that can be observed. For example, plant-based foods are a big market driver, and figures from 2020 show growth of more than 50%, reaching a total market volume of 1 billion euro. Also, convenience food experience a renaissance due to more time spent working from home. And as Germans see a direct link between nutrition and health, also fortified foods, so foods that are enriched in vitamins or protein, are growing, but also so-called superfoods like avocado, pomegranate, or jackfruit enjoy growing popularity. This is paralleled by a development to free from labeled food products, for example, gluten-free fruits, and also fair trade food like fruit and veggies, coffee, tea, or chocolate items are very high in demand. Here we see how this trends manifest themselves in the case of plant-based food. For example, there already is a considerable market for plant-based milk with a sales volume of almost 400 million euro, and also the market for plant-based meat reaches a considerable size. Here we see the outcome of a survey amongst German consumers about which food items they intend to purchase more often in 2022. And we see that organic foods represent another huge market opportunity. So the German market for organic food is already well established and reached a sales volume of almost 16 billion euro in 2021. That was an increase of 5.8% compared to the previous years. And there is, for example, a growing ecosystem of supermarket chains that focus exclusively on organic foods. The market leader at Dense Bio already has a network of more than 230 stores. Getting listing with local retail companies is, of course, very important if you want to enter the German supply chain. And the food retail market in Germany is highly competitive. There is a number of huge trading houses that operate several supermarket chains, and the market leader is the AHK group with more than 11 share at 27%, market share of 21%. Next is the Schwarz group with a market share of 6%. At the end, unsuccessful market at 7%. In international food producers, they are not only entering the they are also major investors, and one example is the Ronneberg Group from Norway, which spends 8.5 million euro to build a manufacturing plant for vegan milk alternatives, which will open later this year. And of course, we would love to see similar market entries from Australia. But besides the food and beverage industry, Victoria is also home to a number of innovative companies from the fields of medical technology and biotechnology. And this provides opportunities to supply the German healthcare market. So healthcare is one of the strongest growing industries in Germany, and total healthcare expenditure now amounts to a massive 405 billion euros per year. That's more than 1 billion euro per day. And the GDP contribution of almost 12% is more than double than the re-owned German car industry. And again, it's important to point out that Germany is Europe's largest importer. So in 2020, the German healthcare industry imported goods worth 111 billion euros. That's the equivalent of 175 billion Australian dollars. And again, over the past 10 years, the health care imports into Germany grew by an average of 5.2%. So this illustrates the huge market that Victorian companies can tap into. But Victoria is also for advanced manufacturing in Australia, and this again offers many pathways and to enter the German supply chain. Also last year, the GDP contribution of the manufacturing industry in Germany amounted to 23.5%. By international comparison, this is very high. For example, here in Australia, manufacturing contributes only around 6%. So it's of course not possible to cover all important sectors such as aerospace, automotive, or machinery and equipment. But as we will later hear from a Victorian company called Additive Assurance, I choose additive manufacturing or 3D printing as an example. So Germany is the #1 market for additive manufacturing in Europe, accounting for almost 35% of the total European market. And the industry continues to see strong growth. If we take 2020 as a base year, then the total additive manufacturing market in Germany was 1.6 billion euro, and this is expected to grow to 2.4 billion euros in 2023. And in recent years, one of the biggest investments from Victoria to Germany was a company called SPIE3D. A subsidiary in Lübeck. So this is an example of Germany. So open or setting up a business in Germany, don't hesitate to contact us. With this, I will stop my presentation for today, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very, very much. I guess the size of the market is the carrot and what gets you there. And I think we saw it's a sizable market in many of the sectors where Australia is strong. And now we are very pleased to introduce Cornelia Camacho, who has been working for the German-Australian Chamber of Industry and Commerce since October 2021 as a consultant in the customer success team. A wonderful team. That's what it's all about, success for you. She studied business informatics in Stuttgart, Germany, and has over 20 years of business experience with SMEs, having worked in the corporate world, both in Germany and Australia. The customer success team delivers a range of services for Chamber members and the consulting clients, and brings Australian and German business communities together. Cornelia currently consults, supports business with market entry research, helps finding distributors and trade partners for both German and Australian clients, and facilitates inquiries such as import and export requirements. With that, I'll pass on to Cornelia.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I just try to share with you the screen now. And I hope that will work now. Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And again, thank you, Rolf, for the introduction. Let's go ahead and see what we have to offer you. When you come into uncharted waters, just generally speaking, what is the first thing you would think of? Get help from other sailors or from the ports? You do not have to reinvent the wheel. We all know that saying, and therefore I would like to show you how the German-Australian Chamber of Industry and Commerce helps you the best way possible to reach successfully your ultimate aim to enter the German supply chain. And I'm happy to introduce you today to the services we can offer to you on your journey to find a marketplace for your excellent products, I guess. And I will show you why we are an excellent partner and source for you in pursuing your aim. And we will accompany you on your journey. What can we offer you? I break down our services into four and call them the power tools. So the first one is market research analysis for market entry. Second one, business partner matching. And third one, delegations. And last but not least, we also perform and offer to you intercultural workshops. Let's have a look into that. With a market analysis or market research, you explore the market for your specific products and industry. You find out what customers want, what makes competitors strong, and how great the potential for sales and revenue is. You can identify opportunities and risks on the market for example, a new business model. You will be able to analyze the factors which are influencing the market development. Now, I have shown you here on the slide 4 different types of of analysis, but sometimes it's a combination we can do of all 4. So for the industry analysis, that shows you trends and specifications based on your agreed criteria with us. Then the competitor analysis is information about local and international competitors. And for example, you will focus here on price analysis. Market structure could be an analysis of possible strategic delivery relationships or the representation of sales channels. And then one thing which is really important for you, I guess, is the market entry conditions. So what are the required product standards? What are the import requirements? Are there any necessary licenses or even registrations you need to deal with German supply chain? Another tool I said is business partner matching, and that is something which is very at the moment very much asked. So let's think you have done your homework, you have done your market research, and you now feel like confident and ready to go, and where to go from here. So you have chosen, let's say, that you want to export to the German market, and you want to do that together with local businesses, distributors. And in this case, the first thing is, how do I find them? How do I contact them? How do I approach them in a professional way? No doubt, a well-considered search of a business partner is absolutely essential. I believe you will agree with that. But then the time difference, the accessibility of market data, and of course, cultural differences make searching for a suitable business partner quite difficult, and I guess at times quite challenging, in particular with our time difference we have. But with our business partner matching service, we can help to overcome these barriers, and we individually support you with your search for the optimal German business partner. Our network in Germany, with 79 AHKs, which are the Chamber of Commerce in Germany we are dealing with, and our expertise in bilateral business environment should give you the trust, knowing with whom you are dealing to succeed in your aim to enter the German market with your excellent products. Undoubtedly, I believe the Chamber can open doors for you and supports with invaluable, credible introductions. Now, how does that all work? So what we do is we do an address search. So we have got from you most likely a very clear description of what kind of partner you are looking at. And we are trying to get 20 to 30 quality tested companies together. They are evaluated by us and pre-selected, and we would supply you with a list like that. You would have a look at it, and you could select out of them what you will think would be the right partner for you. Then we would get the right contacts, which is the most important thing, to get exactly that contact person in the company with whom you would want to discuss your dealings. And we would prepare a cover letter. Most likely here, that is the German cover letter with your company profile. And we would dispatch this via email and would get a report to you about the results. We do follow up afterwards. We clarify any questions which are still maybe outstanding, or we even prepare for more information if requested. And then that could be the case that you want already to get a little bit deeper. We can also provide you with a company background check, but that most likely comes maybe a little bit later on. And then comes the really exciting part of this business partner matching, and that is the business trip. Now that we have the possibility finally again that we can travel, I guess there is the personal part of it very, very important, and we can help you here with the coordination of the travel logistic, from flights to accommodations, hotels, rental cars, and so on. And then there is that hosting of the business meeting. So sometimes these things could be still in an online version, so virtually, but we also help you here with in person. Another possibility we have is to do delegations, and delegations could be a network conference. It could be a visit of a fair, for example, the Hanover Fair. It could be also a study tour. You can gain direct insights into the German market in your industry. And in addition, sorry, I was a little bit too fast. In addition to that, we get you together with these companies. It is not a one-on-one matching then, but it is really a group event. And this group event can, of course, also lead then to individual talks, but it's more like really a networking in a bigger group and not a one-on-one. So what should you get out of our services which we offer you? Well, I would say do your homework well before you are starting and dig deeper into your market with excellent market research, customized for your specific product market. Secondly, make use of the Chambers network to connect and connect with the right partner in your industry. And to be successful in a foreign market, you need to know more about only your product and your market. You need to know the ins and outs of the German culture and the German business behavior. And the intercultural workshops we are offering are really good for you, because it's not only to show you how you greet and if you shake hands or not. It goes so much deeper into it. It's more of showing you really, for example, how the culture is actually dealing with criticism. How can you address certain things? And I'm pretty sure everyone knows that in Germany we have a huge amount of family businesses. These family businesses are very, very proud of what they have established, and so they present themselves most likely also in maybe a different way than here in Australia we would present our profile, and we help you here really to understand and how to deal in this case with the business partner. I would like to encourage you also to hop onto our website and sign up to our newsletter. And if you haven't done that already, then stay simply informed about the bilateral business activities of the Chamber. And as I said in the beginning of my presentation, we are here to help. The doors are open. Use the available resources to you. This was also mentioned in the previous event about the hidden gems. Really use what is out there, and then hopefully one day we will have the pleasure to welcome you as one of our hidden gems in the German supply chain. And Rolf, I think I will pass back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, because you may sense I'm getting very keen to introduce Martin and Nathan. Good and well to say, all the support and how it works, but these two panelists have done it day to day. So my pleasure is to introduce Martin Jörg. He is the CEO of Additive Assurance, which he co-founded in 2019. He's passionate about industrialization of additive manufacturing through lifting the standards in the manufacturing process. Martin was the original inventor of the technology behind additive assurance, quality assurance, techniques stemming from his PhD research at Monash University. In prior work, Martin has a background in aerospace engineering and has worked across the industry in Germany, United States, and back home in Australia. And secondly, our next panelist, Nathan O'Neill, is the Victorian branch manager and national key accounts manager at Henning Harders Australia Pty Limited. Nathan joined the business in 2007 and has worked in a variety of roles, including imports, exports, customs, customer service, as well becoming a licensed customs broker. During his 15 years in the business, Nathan has worked closely with many new and established exporters to help navigate various challenges in the international supply chain, and has experience in handling a range of commodities from chemicals and machinery to food and beverages. With that, we enter the panel discussion, and we're running a little bit behind, so it's going to be a structured discussion and then an open discussion where you can put your questions in the chat box. And unfortunately, that's the only way you can ask questions, but we'll look at them and obviously we'll pass them on to the panelists as we can. But Martin, let me start with you. So you are doing process monitoring and you have reimagined it. So it's process monitoring and quality assurance solution for laser powder bed infusion additive manufacturer, something like that.
Quite the mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah, and so it's a high fidelity process data coupled with powerful machine learning algorithms, full process traceability, and so on. I mean, and this sounds impressive enough, but then you've taken your software and your machine and your scanners, and you brought these to Germany and perhaps United States in the middle of the pandemic, couldn't travel, and you work with major manufacturers in Germany. I believe car companies are included here. I mean, wow, right? And I mean, then in manufacturing and quality assurance, very German. So how have you done it, Martin?
Yeah, no, thanks, Rob. So yeah, it's a bit of background on us. So Additive Assurance is a startup out of Monash University. So very proudly Victorian, and have been selling our products now into Germany to some of our key clients like Volkswagen, who are using our solution in their production facility in Germany, and other similar type of companies in Germany. So we're very proud as a very small Victorian startup to be selling to the world, and particularly into Germany, where it is the 3D printing and additive manufacturing heartland. So we started in 2019. Building our original product, and really we were just at the point of commercialization and selling when the COVID hit for the first time, which is, for a startup, that could be devastating. But thankfully we have been able to penetrate some of these networks and get connections into the various different organizations that operate 3D printing in Germany particularly. And through persistently working towards our goals, we've been able to deliver units, do everything remotely, all the sales calls remotely, and eventually deliver a unit and install our units remotely as well, which has been quite the challenge, but quite interesting.
Yeah, incredible. And I mean, your supply chain really is interesting, right? So I said in theory, like non-linear and onshoring, etc. But in addition to all of that, you have managed to find partners to help with the production, and I suppose your software lives in the cloud. But I mean, all of that via Zoom, and finding someone that helps you produce components and then selling it to major manufacturers. I mean, it's a little bit more than willingness to stay up late to manage the timeline. Tell me a little bit about how your supply chain works and the strength of your supply chain.
Yeah, so I think there's a few different points to unpack here. So 3D printing or additive manufacturing is obviously a hugely enabling technology in order to shrink supply chains potentially. In practice, this has turned out to be a little bit like the fear when it came to home PCs replacing the need for paper and printed things in terms of paper printing. In fact, this has become a driving force for greater supply chain diversification in many ways as well. So it's a little bit of a misnomer. But in terms of our supply chain, so we produce our units here in Victoria, and we export to the world, but we have parts coming from all over the world. One of the things that, Rolf, we've pleasure to talk about is the different tax implications of getting some of our supplied parts from Germany, bringing to Australia, doing value add operations and returning them, and all the different implications for that, which would be quite a piece to unpack if we have the time for it later on.
No, absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, you are very diverse. I mean, Nathan, maybe if I can get to you, you are based in Victoria. I think by default that probably defines a little bit the industry you look after. Tell me a little bit about your business and what is important to you as also in a customer relationship. It's may not be unmuted. I'm not sure. I'm not hearing. No, sorry, you were. Pardon me.
There we go. Can you guys hear me now?
Wonderful. Yes.
Thank you very much. And thanks for the introduction, Rolf. Look, Henning Harters, we are a family-owned freight forwarding business. You know, we've been in operation for about 35 years. You know, we have deep roots in the German culture. Our founder, Mr. Henning Harters, sailed across from Germany in 1953 and started up the first offices of a German freight agency in Australia post-war years. So yeah, look, we have a fantastic relationship with shippers and importers from Europe and Germany. I guess we are, being a family business, all about relationships. We want to obviously see our customers succeed. You know, we want to provide the right opportunities to them. Every business is unique. They all have their own unique challenges, and it's just about matching the right services with each of those businesses.
Wonderful. And I mean, I have to ask you because there are capacity constraints. I'm still waiting for a bike that I ordered for my son in October. Whilst I went to the shop and got a bike for my other son, so it's improving, could buy it straight away. So they're well documented. We all understand it. So everybody's asking, are there more planes up in the air, more ships, more containers entering the ports? Anything you can tell us here?
Absolutely. Look, it's no secret that the supply chain has its challenges at the moment. We are shipping record volumes of containers and cargo around the world, and due to COVID disruptions, there is a lot of congestion. There has been hundreds of thousands of containers added into the market, but essentially when vessels are taking twice as long to transit between locations, those containers are essentially sitting on the water for a long period of time. So there is equipment shortages, there are delays. However, the top carriers are in the process of producing and building a number of mega ships to enter into the market. We are expecting that the congestion and the challenges will continue throughout 2022 and possibly 2023, but will start to ease then, and hopefully a dropping of the freight rates as well that have obviously shot up during the COVID and congestion period.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, Cornelia, I mean, Martin, you know, typical, if I can stereotype, sort of Aussie way, oh, well, you know, can't travel, I do it online, etc. And then, yeah, I found my partners and it worked okay. I mean, what is the other side like in Germany? Because I think, you know, like Delegation, we all know the famous business conferences, trade fairs, etc., where, you know, you get to know each other, you get a first-hand experience. How did you manage the lack of all that interaction that Germans are used to, and how did it play out in Martin's example and maybe a few others?
I think we did very well in the last 2 years. People had to change. All of us had to change all of a sudden to deal with online all the time, to meet people. Obviously, it's not the best way, and it is always better to be personally in front of people. But I think everyone has tried to cope the best with it. And so I do believe that it is, of course, a really good thing if you have a delegation and you can take people to Germany or vice versa, and you do these site visits. That is the optimal, I guess. But if it's not possible for the reasons we know, then at least I guess technology has really given us a platform so that we could continue with business. It wasn't that it has all of a sudden stopped. It really has given us a way of doing it differently. I have done one in October, and I think that has actually worked out quite well, and hopefully they are all very successful in the future with it. But I can say that at the moment we get quite a lot of inquiries that people are coming to, for example, to Australia, and I believe the other way around. And that is a good thing. And I really look forward that we can actually do these things really now in person again.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, that leads me to ask Martin, which part of the Zoom business will you retain? Because you would say, you know, it worked. You know, you have online monitoring, I think you spoke about. I mean, you don't have to change people downloading your software through the cloud, but probably more importantly, in terms of traveling now, what will change, and what is it that you can't wait to do now that you can?
Yeah, no, I think if anything, I would even challenge the notion that a lot of the in-site visits that in-person visits that we were doing before the pandemic, a lot of them were unnecessary. We found out that, you know, we could be a lot more efficient. So instead of traveling around from customer site to site, and you may be able to do 1, maybe 2 visits per day, I can set up 10 Zoom calls of an evening and connect with 10 different clients in rapid fire succession. So I can access much larger portion of the market and leverage my relatively limited resources in a much more efficient way. So I'd say it's even better. The thing that is really hard to replicate that we found, and this is really the benefit of the Chamber of Commerce too, is the introduction. So the initial introduction is something that is hard to replicate. You know, remotely. You can reach out to people via LinkedIn. You can try and establish the businesses and go through other connections that you have, and all those kinds of different methodologies. But nothing really replaces the face-to-face trade show. So we'll be back at all of the big German trade shows. We'll be at Formnext later this year. We were very pleased that we were at Formnext, which is a large additive manufacturing conference in Frankfurt each year. We were there in November last year, and we'll be there every year because it's such a great place to meet all the key people within the industry. And that's the thing that you really can't replicate online. Yeah,
wonderful. Yeah, I mean, the trade shows, and particularly if you have a product that's really leading the way in many aspects like yours, must be fun there to talk to people and see their reaction when they hear that this company from Victoria, Australia, has this to offer in terms of, you know, reducing waste and the like. Now, sort of looking at something that is very certain, which is change. And I think the invitation was, you know, already talking about, you know, labeling and packaging requirements and that regulation and this regulation. Nathan, to what point can you take this burden of your clients, and what maybe then following on from that, what are some of the things where, you know, you really see hiccups?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question, and one that many shippers are certainly not prepared to solve this issue on their own, and that is the labeling. Obviously, with the European Green Deal coming out, there are going to be changes to labeling requirements, certainly for food and beverage products. You know, it is important to find the right partner as well, who can offer some guidance and consultancy here. Essentially, it can have dire consequences if you export your product and you don't adhere to the importing country's labeling requirements. That can result in your product being turned around at the border or having to be unpacked and individually relabeled. So I do know that it is going to be a focus of the European Green Deal to really dial down on packaging and labeling of products. So it's certainly important that you ensure you speak with the professionals about what impact that will have on your products.
Yeah, no, you know, I mean, talking to Martin, he said, like, well, you know, there's rules and regulations, but then maybe sort of some leniency on smaller players as well. So, you know, some of the So, and that might be a question to Cornelia, like probably worthwhile looking at some of the impact on the bigger players, and maybe sort of some leniency in certain aspects for smaller players, where they might, still, adhere to the rules and regulation, particularly around sustainability in terms of product placement and the like. But what would you say? I mean, is it easier for smaller players, much easier, or is it sort of a mixed bag?
Hard to say. But I think, regulations, obviously, for a small company, it's the same important thing than for a bigger company, and they have to deal with it. And I would say, Nathan said it, you have to deal with the specialists, with the people which know it, because you don't want to have any hiccups, which unforeseen. There are so many things which you have to think about when you go into a different market. And that's why I said in the beginning, just try to find the right people which can give you advice, and don't try to do everything alone, because that can take you back to the beginning again. And you want to have a good start. So do your research in the beginning before you really go ahead, and make sure that you have covered the most.
Oh, wonderful. And maybe around the European FTA, and maybe do around the entire group. I mean, what is your hope on the European FTA, and what pressure points could that release for you? Maybe starting with you, Martin.
Yeah, look, in terms of what we do, obviously greater cooperation is very welcome. Getting open access to the European market would be a big step forward for startups like ourselves. At the moment, obviously, we need to go through and solve each of these pieces of red tape wherever they are required, whether it be things like the Green Deal or various other regulatory constraints. But having a common framework across all of Europe, and then plus having the Australian free trade agreement would be a huge step forward for us. But Nathan, I feel that you would be best to speak to this point.
Yeah, look, the European Free Trade Agreement, it is in its 12th round of negotiations at the moment. We do hope that they will finalise that very soon. But I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Martin. Europe is one of Australia's largest trading nations. They are our 7th largest export destination. Unfortunately, Australia is a very long way away from Europe and Germany, so freight costs are high. So any benefit to shippers looking to enter that market where products might be cost sensitive is going to be welcomed. So I think it's a fantastic initiative. I really hope they get it across the line soon.
And Cornelia?
Yeah, I think Nathan and Martin have covered it. It would be great, and it would make it, in particular for the smaller companies, which have to deal with it much easier, and it will be really good to see if something could be sorted out quite quickly. Yeah,
and Nathan, I mean, like, and Martin for that matter, like once you established in Germany, what are the next steps? I guess your network extends well beyond Germany. Do you also then help with the shipping within Europe, or do you have partners you cooperate with?
Yeah, so we certainly do have partners in every country around the world. Exporters should certainly be cautious about the contracts that they do sign and the risk and responsibility in the supply chain that they do undertake, especially if you are dealing with a new foreign market. So, obviously someone can get very excited, and I'm sure Martin would know the feeling of perhaps signing a deal with Volkswagen or the like, and perhaps a contract being put in front of you to look after a little bit more of the supply chain than you would be comfortable with. It is important that you do get, some firm advice around, navigating the supply chain and transport in a foreign country before agreeing to any conditions that might bring you unstuck.
Martin, I mean, that's, yeah, you're signing a contract, you know, with a major manufacturer, a global player. It's
very intimidating for a you know, a fresh new company coming in and signing a contract with someone like Volkswagen, you know, many hundreds of pages long contract terms. Yeah, there's obviously some things that, so we had to learn a few lessons very quickly in terms of how to access these markets. We obviously had to get up to speed coming at this. Previously, my career was, I came from the PhD, the research side of things, and getting into this operations business has been a whole learning experience for myself, but thankfully I've got a team around me that know more than I do on these points. But getting the shipping codes right, getting that agreement with the contractor, you know, making sure that your freight costs fully encapsulate the duties and all the other things is basic stuff. But obviously, if you're coming at this fresh, it's really important that, yeah, you do look into it further and don't just say, should be right, which, you know, we aren't intending to do usually in Australia.
Yeah. Okay, well, I do want to encourage Q&A via the chat box. So, and don't feel like you have to be, you know, striving to immediately supply Volkswagen. Like, it can be any form of industry. It doesn't have to be manufacturing. And we'll try to deal with the question in terms of particular sort of some of the complexities around the German market. And I do want to maybe talk about the, you know, if you are willing to part with some advice. I mean, Cornelia, you're very comfortable doing that. That's your day-to-day business. But you know, maybe sort of top 3 things entering the German market. What comes to mind?
Come to the German market. I think very important aspect, what I started to show was this intercultural part of it, because like Martin just said, you know, here in Australia, we think, oh, it will work somehow. And I think the Germans are very organized and have a certain way of doing things. And for that reason, I think it is very important that the exporter also know about it. And that expectations are maybe there, and they should know these expectations so that there is no lack of some kind of the right behavior. So I think to be very good prepared is something to go into this. Like I said, to have an excellent product alone doesn't help. And even if you have maybe already done all of that in a different country, and you have your success there, that's really great. But then look into the country itself and what is special there. Like when we think of big companies like Pepsi and Coca-Cola, when they started to go onto the Chinese market, they made both big mistakes. And if you are big, you can maybe start again and have also the budget to do so. If you are a smaller size or middle-sized company, then you probably have one go. So therefore, I really would encourage people to do your homework well in the beginning and really find the right partner. Take your time with that. And the better you actually can describe and define your avatar, if you can call it like that, the better we, for example, could help you to find this partner. But that is the same if you are looking for them by yourself. Find really out with whom you want to work. And I think that is something which is absolutely essential.
Okay. Martin, top tips from you, like very recent experience.
Couldn't agree more, Cornelia. That's exactly the things that we found firsthand. So our approach, one thing that's probably important is obviously there's some differences in how Australians behave in a business sense versus how Germans behave as a generalization. The thing that we've found be very effective is to be very straight and frank with our responses, and also be very prompt and timely. I think these are things that hold true all across the world. Being able to answer questions or concerns in a very concise and straightforward manner is incredibly important, and also being incredibly prompt. That includes the basic things like being exactly on time for meetings, all the way through to delivery schedules and planning for all of those kinds of things, and obviously working in buffer times on your end before you commit to something you can't deliver on. So yeah, that's incredibly important, that's clear, concise, and very frank in the approach.
Well, Nathan, I think you know that. I think your website says something about punctual and reliable or something along those lines.
Yes.
Were the Germans forgiven in this environment, or was it still?
Look, luckily, the Germans are a little forgiving with everything going on in the world at the moment. And Martin, you do hit the nail on the head that you have to really plan for additional lead time when you're negotiating contracts. At the moment, bookings can take up to 8 to 10 weeks just to secure a vessel, and then another 40, 50 to 60 days before it can reach Europe. So extensive shipping times always allow a long buffer. Be careful when agreeing to terms and conditions about what you can supply and when. Always ensure that your insurance policy is up to date. If you are manufacturing product for a certain project and it's time sensitive, if any delays are going to impact you, it's important to have a policy that will cover you for delays, which are prevalent with the supply chain issues that are going on at the moment. And expect that freight rates will be high. Build them into your business model for the foreseeable future. We don't expect them to go down anytime soon. So I guess plan for the high costs and the bumpy ride would be my advice for now.
Yeah, so once you have a ride, don't try to negotiate cost. Enjoy the fact that you have a ride. That's
Yes.
something that came through, and it made me, think about my conversation too with you and Martin. We don't know each other that well, and I rang you and I said, like, right, this is Rolf. Do you have time to talk? And bang, straight into the topic. And you didn't blink, so you must be used to it. But what sort of cultural differences did surprise you, and what's different from the Australian market, Martin?
I think it comes down to that punctuality aspect of nature that goes throughout the entire thing, and the frankness that I mentioned before. That is probably the one defining characteristic of being clear and concise. That really holds true and really cuts through, because I think the opposite to that is selling to an American. In the case of selling to an American, you often talk for long periods of time. There's quite often a lot of embellishment involved in those kinds of processes, and it's quite a different approach. But if you try that in Germany, you will fail. So I think the other thing that really has an advantage for a Victorian or Australian company going into Germany is they fundamentally, a lot of Germans like Australia. We've got our culture is very agreeable, and they like dealing with us because we're very agreeable and easygoing. So that's one of our key strengths that we should really leverage as a country and as exporters into Germany, is that we're a nation of people that can do, and we're happy to give everything a go, and that fundamentally they like that.
Yeah, and language wasn't a barrier?
Language can be a barrier at times, so depending on who you're going to. Thankfully, I should also caveat that one of our, actually two of our team members are German speakers, so that does help a long way. And ich spreche nur ein bisschen auf Deutsch, a tiny bit.
Yep.
So that helps a little bit. However, generally speaking, obviously English is the language of trade, and you usually aren't facing issues there unless you're dealing with very small companies.
Yeah, wonderful. And Nathan, being likable Australian only gets you so far. So, and anything you can, you do tell your clients, particularly if they're new to the German markets?
Yeah, look, I think Germans have a great respect for Australians and vice versa. I think ultimately we advise clients that there is great opportunities in that market. We saw the sort of figures from Heiko's presentation about the demand for imported foods and beverages there, and Australia is an enormous food and beverage producer. So there's enormous opportunities. They're a great trading partner, albeit a little bit blunt, perhaps in the communication style sometimes, as Martin mentioned, but certainly a great opportunity for many Australian shippers.
Yeah, and labeling, can be doubtful, but I think the Germans would, look out for the Made in Australia label, so you can use that for your advantage. Cornelia, when you talk to your clients, customers, where is it that you say, no, it's really that way? You can't ignore this or the like.
Yeah, I think very important is, like we said before, this punctuality, but also just make sure you keep the people in the loop. If you have committed yourself to hand some information or to come to a meeting and things like that, it's very much expected. And yes, I think the Germans like the Australians. I have the feeling we are a little bit here exotic for them. So we are far away and they are thinking of beaches and things like that. But you also have to understand that they are very organized, and I think that is what they expect that you are, when you are dealing with them, do the same. So keep them in the loop. That's very good and welcome. And I know that we Germans are maybe a little bit straightforward. We don't mince our words, so maybe sometimes comes a little bit harsh, but it is very clear, very honest. And when questions are there, they come to the table and they have to be discussed. I think that is also one thing you have to deal with, and nothing wrong with that, as long as you know and you can prepare yourself for that.
Okay, well, we have not too much time left because I do want to hand back to Global Victoria and Michael to close things. But the two angles that came through that I think we should try and touch on very briefly. One is, advice in a cost-effective way, testing the market before you enter. So quickly, Martin, Nathan, Cornelia, what can you say around that?
Make sure you articulate your key selling points, make sure they're very well tested, and try and test them with as many different people as possible. I mean, use the chamber as a sounding board to a degree to make sure your key selling points actually cut through global markets. So if it is the first time that you're selling internationally, or use the team from Global Victoria, which thankfully they're there to support with those kinds of things.
Yep, my advice would be always to start small. We've had customers approach us. They've been promised the world in terms of contracts, and they've come to us to charter the next aircraft to get their product into the market. And obviously, you need to test the waters first. So start small, arrange small sample shipments, ensure the product complies with all import requirements and the local legislation, and anything that goes wrong, it's not going to hurt you in the long run financially. So yeah, certainly start small and build from there.
Yeah, from my point of view also, if you start and you have done your homework, then a small start with a handful of people which you can approach, and maybe approach them if they are not the top ones in your list, and then see how you go. So if anything is going wrong, then you have the really big ones in front of you and can improve there. So give it a go.
Yeah, and I think there's one more question around, should you go directly? I would say there's nothing wrong with being linear, right? It's not like you have to build a totally globally integrated supply chain that is autonomous and digital right away. So we didn't go there. We didn't try to create that impression. And I think, Martin, I mean, you had a proven product before you took it to Germany, and then ways of maybe integrating services and the like came along the way. So I think with that, I better close and pass back. But I couldn't help but enjoy the enthusiasm, the can-do approach, the Victorian success story, the Germans and Victorians working together well, all the support that Nathan and his company can provide to get it right, and Cornelia with the tools and the know-how to get it right. So really, my thoughts and prayers are with Ukraine and other areas and external factors. But I just really enjoyed to escape all of that and really enjoyed the positive can-do approach by everybody. But with that, Michael, back to you. And obviously, I suspect maybe Sarah would like to say something, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rolf, and indeed on this day with some, of course, really sad geopolitical developments. I think it was really good to have this conversation today to really focus on opportunities, which, of course, without doubt exist really in terms of the German market and accessing German supply chain. And thank you, of course, Rolf, for your wonderful moderation. It is clear that from your decades of experience working for Ernst & Young, you really put the questions to the right spot and really helped to bring our discussion to a forward and really ensured a very productive discussion today. Of course, our great thanks not just goes to our participants, but of course also to our panelists, as well as, of course, to Global Victoria. Sarah is really has been a wonderful introduction speaker for Global Victoria and the Victorian government. But and as Martin just pointed out, they are extremely helpful in supporting businesses that are expanding from Victoria into international markets. And of course, I hope we were able to show today that Germany is a very relevant market for many Victorian businesses. And if you're not yet involved in the German market and German supply chains, it's definitely worth considering that. Work with Global Victoria, but of course also work with the Chamber. As Cornelia pointed out, we have unique services that we can provide you, including those detailed market analysis and intercultural workshops that really will give you an edge when you are really dealing with German businesses and German decision makers. Of course, also a huge thank to Nathan with your insights into the practical issues of the supply chain, which of course are absolutely fundamental in order to be successful in international markets. So that has been wonderful to hear from firsthand about what issues there are now with global bottlenecks, but of course also how to overcome them. What are the steps and what are the traps you should avoid? As you pointed out, don't start by chartering a full plane to bring your product first time into a new market, but start slow and build up from there once you see there is market acceptance. And of course, it confirms to all other things. One other point just I wanted to mention very quickly was, of course, the discussion also touched on the free trade agreement, which has been in negotiations since 2018 and which we hope and really push for from the German-Australian Chamber point of view to be concluded before the end of this calendar year. And that would be indeed a huge support for Australian, including Victorian businesses, as well as German businesses. And as Cornelia pointed out, of course, particularly for small and medium-sized businesses. Because an FTA, of course, not just removes tariff barriers, which are really important in order to be competitive on international markets, and therefore that will definitely help businesses. But an FTA also removes non-tariff barriers, things like certification, product standards, and access to government procurement, for example. So there is definitely very promising things coming up, and I think we can all be optimistic that with a lot of goodwill on both sides between Australia and the EU, a comprehensive FTA can be reached hopefully before the end of the year. Thank you everyone for participating today on behalf of the German Australian Chamber, our panelists and Global Victoria. Thank you, and we're looking forward to seeing you at our next webinar or at our next discussion in person, and definitely looking forward to having that as well. Thank you, and have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.